Amelia here, welcome to a new sewing tutorial. Today I have for you a sewing tutorial for sweater 104 from Burda 1122, and it's this one that I'm wearing now, and I invite you to sew this sweater with me. It's made in a gorgeous French terry from Minerva, an exclusive terry from Minerva. And I was wondering myself what to do with this fabric. The print is a little bit big, and I was thinking what will be the best garment to make with, and I think this is the best one. So I was thinking that it would be nice to make a tutorial for you to sew it. This is a really on-trend style with the pleats on the shoulders, on the sleeves, and a little bit roomy. And the original pattern, it has cuffs made with the same fabric as the rest of the sweater, and also the neckband is made with the same fabric. But I decided that I want to have a little bit of breaking of this pattern, a little bit of contrast, so I used some pre-cut ribbing. This is the only one that I had in navy, and also for the cuffs and a little bit for the neckband. And I think this turned out really nice. In this tutorial I'm going to start really with how to find the pattern on the crazy pattern sheet from Burda, how to find it on the pattern sheet, how to trace it, add seam allowances. I'm going to show you also the few changes that I made for the pattern that I wanted to have them in this sweater. So I'm going to talk you through also on those changes, and then I'm going to show you how I am sewing this, how I'm making the pleats, and the rest of the construction. I'm going to use for the sewing tutorial my serger in combination with my sewing machine. Because I'm adding bands here, I don't need to worry about hemming this sweater. But if you are not using bands and you are just going to add the hem as per instructions, you will have to use a double needle or cover stitch machine if you have, or let me think, or a zigzag on your sewing machine, or a blind hem on your serger, like I have the tutorial here on YouTube. So all of that. But mine is a little bit simplified because of all the bands that I'm using. But of course you can use exactly as here, and I'm talking it through in the tutorial how to follow also the bands steps like in the instructions. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Again, this is the finished project that you will get if you are going to use the tutorial, and I'm talking really about how to quarter the neckline, how to put elastic in the shoulder seams, how to make the pleats, baste the pleats, and everything else. So I hope you'll enjoy the tutorial, and if you do enjoy the tutorial, please give me a thumbs up. Happy sewing! So as I said, we are going to work with a Burda pattern, and I really want to start really from the beginning of it, and ending of course with the final project. So I have here the Burda magazine that I'm going to use. Of course I already have my pattern traced and everything and cut and ready to start sewing. But if you are new to Burda, I'm going to use a Burda magazine German edition, and the rest of the editions, they are going to be pretty similar, of course, in other languages. But here I have the Burda, German Burda issue 1122, and in the German Burda you have the patterns. They will be in a separate little book here in the middle of the magazine, and in the middle of the instructions book you have the pattern sheets, this big sheet with the patterns. So I'm always using a knife or something like that to open the staples here in the middle. Let me see where they are. Here I open them with a knife, and then I close the staples back. So now I want, as I said, I am going to make sweater 104, and that is this one here. I can see the sweater that I want to make, and I see that is pattern 104. So then I go to see in the instructions book, I go to see where that is, and here is sweatshirt 104, and if I can zoom in a little bit, here I can see that I will find the pieces that I need on the pattern sheet A, and I need to have pieces 1 till 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here are the sizes. This pattern is in sizes 34, 36, 38, 40 and 42. And there is also mentioned that is the black pattern on the pattern sheet A and the parts that I need to have. So the next step is going to be, of course, to locate the pattern sheets, the pattern on the pattern pieces on my pattern sheet. But before that, I also want to know exactly what size I'm going to make. And in the Burda magazine, I am going to zoom a little bit out again. In the Burda magazine, you find the size chart also in the instructions book or part of the magazine, depends which issue you have. The German one, they are here after the technical drawings here. And based on my measurements, you know, of course you have to take your own measurements and check those against the pattern, the size chart. But in my case, I'm going to make a size 40, although the bust is putting in a 42 in this in the Burda, but because it's a roomy sweater, I'm going to take my chances with the size, and that's just because of my experience with the Burda patterns and because of the style of the sweater. I'm going to make a size 40. The waist and the hips are not they are important because the pattern needs to have enough width also about around the hips, but I'm going to go with a size 40 because I know it's a pattern with a lot of ease. So I know that I need to have size 40, and if I'm watching here in the book, I can see that my size 40 is this one with a dashed line, and it's also easy to follow because it's one before the last sizes here. So with this information, I know that I need to go to have sheet A, the black pattern pieces, and from 1 to 5. Then I can put this a little bit to the side. Also something that I always used when I need to start tracing the pattern. You see here you have the pattern pieces that you will have. I have 1, and they say that there is a list here with what everything is and how much how many you need to cut, and I have here number 1 is the front, and it needs to be cut on the fold, and I need to cut it 1 time. Then I have 2 is the yoke, is also must be cut on the fold and needs to be cut 1 time. And again, if you have an English version or a French version or whatever, you have the same information but then in your own language, or Dutch version, and so on. So I always check here because on the pattern sheet itself, so here you have those informations. You will not have those informations besides the notches and the grain line and the number of the pattern piece, and so on. I have here all the information. So I'm going to go now to show you the tracing part, and then we are going to come back here for the seam allowances. And talking about the seam allowances, in the Burda patterns there are no seam allowances included. That's very, very, very important to remember. So I have here the pattern sheet, and it's really, really big. It's so big that I cannot even fit it in my cam, but it's really big. And you have here in the corners you have which pattern sheet you are on. So this one is pattern sheet A. The other one, the opposite one, is going to be pattern sheet C, and then this one is so on. That one is going to be D, and on the other side is going to be pattern sheet B. But we need to have pattern sheet A for this sweater. The next thing that I'm always watching in order to locate my pattern pieces, you have on the bottom and also on the top of each of these sheets, you will have a bunch of numbers in different colors. So I know that I need to have the black color, and I see that on this side here are all black numbers. I see here that there are the black and the green, and on the other side are the blue and the reds, but I need to have the black numbers. Now I know that I need to have from 1 till 5 are the pattern pieces that I need to have. The way that this is made, in order, sorry for that, the way that this is made to locate the pattern pieces is actually really easy, and I don't know if everybody knows that, but they do put it in the magazine. So I see here my 1, and I know that I need to have from 1 to 5. From 1, if I go in a straight line, I have a ruler here, if I go in a straight line from 1 up, I can see here my piece 1. And I just brought another ruler, which you can see better. So I see here my number 1, and I know, because this is also what in the magazine is saying, if I put a ruler, you see here at 90 degrees as a straight line from the 1 from here, then on this straight line I'll have to find somewhere a 1, and here it is. Here is my piece 1. The same if I go to find, let's say I see here 5, you can see the 5 here. If I put my line, my ruler, or if I go with my finger up, I see already the 5 is here. And let's find one that is a little bit more complicated. I see here a 3, which I also need in a moment. I'll come here, or I come with my finger, and if I go up straight, here is 3. So that's the first thing that you need to look on a pattern sheet on Burda. You find the numbers here down, what you need. You look for the color first. You know you need to have the black color. You need to have the numbers that you need. You go up, you'll immediately find 4 is here. If I watch, let's say for the green one, the green piece number 25, well, if I go with my finger from here and I go all the way up and I go straight, I see already 25 is here. So it's really easy. I know if you see this you are going to get dizzy, but it's actually really easy. Well, we have here, so we located, the numbers are here down. Now the next thing is of course to trace the things, and as I previously mentioned in my videos, I'm using ersatz paper. Is a packaging paper. I'll put the weight in the video. I cannot remember. It's a thin paper. It's much durable than tissue paper, but it's still very transparent, and it's perfect for tracing Burda patterns. So let's say I need to have piece 4, and the same way I traced all my pattern pieces, but because here is closer to the edge, I have here piece 4, and I think in the video you can already see it a little bit. Here is the piece with all the sizes. Now in this is actually a little bit easy because there are not a lot of sizes. There are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sizes in this pattern. Well, I know that piece I need to have from 1 to 5. So piece 4 I definitely need to have. And piece 4 I always check a little bit here against my book, and I see I'll need to have a notch somewhere. The dashed line here on the instructions means that it's cut on the fold. So what I need to do, I come with my paper, and I think you can already see that it's pretty transparent. And to trace, mostly I am using mechanical pencil, and this is a 0.7, no, 0.5. That's my preference because it makes a really thin line. And usually I work with the whole roll of paper, but if I cut only a little bit, I can put a weight or something like that. And I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit and then move the thing away. So you can use either, or I use either or mechanical pencil because it's also something that I can erase and change very easily if I need to. Or what I also like to use, especially when I need to tape more pieces of paper, because I'm working with a big, I need to trace a big pattern piece and I need to tape. I like to use a Sharpie, but then a Sharpie with a really thin, with a fine line point. So definitely not something like they say is a fine point, the ones with the rounded cap, but it's a much thicker line, and as you can see. So I'll never use this one to trace papers because it's adding all over millimeters that I don't need. So I'll use either a really thin Sharpie, which can write very easily over tape, or a mechanical pencil, which is the best. But for this, that you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to use the black one. So I'm going to move my paper a little bit. So I know that I have here my yoke, which I think for, as I could read in my book, is the back yoke. And mostly you can use a ruler to trace in one time the straighter pieces, but I like to dash the lines, and later if I need I can make them in one time. So I see here 1, 2, 3, 4, here are the sizes. This is on the fold, it's the same for all sizes. So if I come here, I know that my size 42 is one before the last one. So I'm just going to dash it, because like that I know that I'm on the line. And here again, and then I go from here, and this is how I'm tracing all the pieces. As you can see, it's really actually very easy. Here I need to press on my paper a little bit, and this will be my size for the yoke. I see here a notch that I need to have, and sometimes I am checking against my Burda book to see if I have all the notches that they are showing here, if I have them on my traced piece also. In this case I don't have a grain line because it's cut on the fold, and here they say that it's the fold, and I like to put some extra information for myself. Sometimes I'm putting this sign because this is telling me immediately that it's cut on the fold. I write that it's piece number 4. I need to write the information is a Burda and is 1122, pattern 104, and sometimes I'm also writing yoke, back, and the size that I'm making. And this is the information that I'm going to put on. If it's something that I need to have also a grain line, I'm always using a ruler to put the grain line and put the direction of the grain line. So this is my piece that is traced, and in this way I'm tracing all the other pieces. I'm tracing them like this on my paper. I always leave a little bit space around because I need to add the seam allowances, and that is what I'm going to talk about now. As I said, in the Burda style patterns there are no seam allowances included, and that is something really important to know if you are not used with to sew with Burda patterns. Something else, of course, they don't include them in the patterns, but they are going from a particular seam allowances. So let's say here in this pattern you have to cut on size the cuffs of the top and the neckband, and that means that they give you here the length of the pieces and the width. Something very important, the seam allowances are included in those pieces. So that means that they are calculating their own seam allowances in this lengths and widths. And here they do all, in the instructions they will always have a little text where they say what are the seam allowances or what you should add to your pattern. Of course you be free to add whatever. I added, because this one is a knit pattern, I added all over the place 6 millimeters. But they advise to add 1.5 centimeters for the seams and 3 centimeters for the hem of the top. So that means that, and they also say that in the pieces that you need to cut yourself, the seam allowances are included. That means, for example, we have here the neck piece, the neckband, which in my size is 51 centimeters long, but in this I need to keep in mind that they added already 3 centimeters, 1.5 on each ends for the seam allowance, and that the advice or the pattern is made with a 5 centimeter wide band, or the neckband is going to be 5 centimeters. That means that when I fold it from the 5 centimeters, I'll use 3 centimeters in total for the seam allowance, so 1.5, 1.5. So my neck bend is going to be 2 centimeters. Very important. Most of the time, the things that you need to cut yourself, bends and bindings and stuff like that, they are with the seam allowances included. And here in the text above, you always find what are the seam allowances that they advise, because those ones are the ones that they are going to use for those pieces. In this case, 1.5 centimeters. So to add the seam allowances on these pieces, I have here my traced yoke. I am going to use, I always use these rulers. Of course, be free to use whatever. You did see me already using this a lot of times. These are the SA curves. Why I like these ones, because the width of these rulers is in this case 1.5, and here is 3/8 of an inch, and it has also all kinds of lines that they are 1/4 of an inch away. And what I like to use in knit patterns is a small seam allowance, because it's something that is going to go with the serger, and it's really easy to use on the serger a smaller seam allowance. So in this case, I like to use a 6mm seam allowance, so that will make 1/4 of an inch, and I'm aligning my ruler with 1/4 of an inch. And here is my shoulder seam allowance, and this is how I am adding to the rest of the pattern. These rulers are really amazing. I have them already, I think, for 10 years, something like that. Of course, I will add also for the neck. Oops, I'm standing here, is a little bit difficult. I don't want to put my head in the cam. And it has really nice curves that I can use to make everything go fast. And because in this example the yoke is cut on the fold, I'm not going to add, of course, any seam allowance to the yoke, but I'm just going to make this one long line. And this is the way I used to add all the seam allowances to all the pieces. And for cutting this, I'm using a pair of paper scissors, and cut everything, and everything is ready to go. Again, you can use in your case, if you are more comfortable with a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, you could use that all over the place. I always find it really easy in a curve seam to use a smaller seam allowance. Is more accurate, and is sewing also very easy. The fabric that I'm going to use, as I said, is going to be this French terry from Minerva. It's an exclusive fabric from Minerva. It's really nice and stretchy, and I think it's going to look really nice in this pattern. Something else that I did before I started cutting on the pattern, although it's a pattern with a lot of ease, it's not really necessary to make a test pattern out of it, but what is important is, of course, to know a little bit about your size. And if you are a beginner, I do hardly recommend to make a test garment for everything you are sewing. You are exercising the sewing techniques, and of course you are able to check the fit and to check the silhouette, to check if you really like the pattern. But I did not do that. I just pinned everything and made a test piece out of the pattern pieces, and to see if I liked the width, if I liked where the shoulder line was coming. Based on that, I made a sway back adjustment. So then I was ready to cut the pattern. In this case, the sleeve pattern piece, and it's so big I cannot even fit it in my cam, is really big. So you really have to, in the Burda, let me see if they do that. In the Burda, they do give here a cutting diagram. I mostly don't follow those. In this case, I had to play a little bit with the print. So, but you have that. And what is also nice in the Burda, in the latest, I don't know, the last year or something like that, they have here a quick start for profis. And if you are really if you are an advanced beginner, let's say, you can really use this, because here they say really easy or really fast the steps, how you can, on really short, how this needs to be sewn together. So here, by example, step 1 is to sew the shoulder seams of the yokes, then make the pleats, and so on. To cut this, you have of course your fabric that you decided on. Again, take a look at the cutting instructions if you are not sure how to place those, but most of the time you have to go with the direction of your fabric. If your fabric has that, I always cut directional, everything is going on one direction, because I'm afraid of if the color is different, or if there is a little bit of a nap that I don't see that in real world you see it. So cut your pieces, and for that I'm using a combination of my rotary cutter with my cutting mat, or scissors, pins and stuff like that. And in this case, on the sleeves you have a bunch of pleats here at the top, and to mark those, I used to mark everything in the past with tailor text. Then I got smarter, I thought, and I was using the Burda Style tracing paper with a tracing wheel. Or now, because most of the time the tracing paper you cannot erase, and it's not always necessary to use that. In this case, I just made some really small slits at every line of the pleats. Not too big, because in my case I'm using only 6mm seam allowance, so just make 2mm little notches on every pleat. And I did use a marker here to mark the shoulder line, because there are a bunch of pleats and you can get a little bit confused. So make for the shoulder pleat, make another, or the pleat that is on the shoulder, you have a shoulder mark on the pattern piece. Make an additional sign that you know that that point is going to come at the shoulder seam. And now I have everything prepared, and as I said, I'm going to sew most of it, or as much as I can, with my serger. And of course you can make all the steps also with your sewing machine. You are using a knit, you not need to finish your fabric, so I think this is going to be a really fast sew. Also, here is my binding again. What I said I'm going to use for the neckline, I'm just going to use, I have here some pre-cut lengths. I'm really curious if this is going to work. But I want to break this print a little bit, and that's why I'm going to use some navy ribbing. I have here some small pieces, perfect for the cuffs, and a piece for the neckline, and a piece for the lower part of the sweater. The adjustments that I made on my pattern, and I want to talk about those, that you'll not think, well, my sweater is not looking like your sweater. Just going to grab the pieces if I can find them here. And the changes are really only personal preference, so be free to follow the pattern all the way. But because I made that tissue fitting step, I decided that I want to have a little bit more room at the hips and a little bit longer, but the length I will be able, and as you can see, is a little bit shaped here down, but I added the length. But this is something that I can later, when the sweater is on, before I finished the lower part, I can decide if I want to make it shorten and add that band, or if I want to just make a hem and let it long as I did here. And to add this length, I just came straight down and decided how much I want to lengthen it, and the same here. And of course always look if these side seams are still going to fit with each other. They need to be the same length, of course. So this is what I changed here. On this piece here, I did make a sway back adjustment. I took away 1.5 centimeters from the length of the back, And for the yoke, you'll see in my finished project also, or finished garment, that my neckline is also a little bit deeper than the one in the magazine. And to change that, this is the front and the back. On the back I used I think one size lower neckline, and here I went 2 or 3 sizes lower, something that I liked. And if I, you know, this is a knit and it's very stretchy, and I can always adjust it a little bit if I'm really not happy on don't go too low, because if you are too low you will not be able to fix it. But I think this is something that I'm going to be happy with if I put it like this. And of course here I will get the 2 centimeters neckband too. So now I'm ready to bring my machine and start sewing on this. So this is my first time sewing this, so I'm going to go with the instructions from the Burda, and we are going to see what we get. First of all, I have here the 2 yokes. So this, the deeper one is the back, and the narrow one is the front. I did make here a small, I hope you can see, to notice exactly where the seam allowance, or where that point is. So here is the 6mm seam allowance. In your case, if you have more, you have probably a bigger seam allowance. And I did the same here with the back. Here I used the tracing paper, and with the red tracing paper, the tracing wheel. I still can see the point here. It doesn't need to be a really very big point. What I like to do in this kind of corners, because let's see, this is not going to be cut, but on the front and the back, this is the front I think, no, this is the back. In the back and the front you have to make a snip here in order to be able to sew the yokes, the deep yokes, the deep V's here. So here I'm going to add a little bit of interfacing, just a small square that is going to help the fabric to be stable and not to unravel. But before I get to that, I have here the yokes, and the instructions are saying to sew first the shoulder seams, and I'm going to sew them, of course, right sides together. And again, I'm using a 6mm seam allowance. You might have a different one. I'm sewing with a serger. Always put the pins perpendicular to the seam, and if you put them parallel, I mean if you put them perpendicular like this, you always be careful to take them out, because if you are coming here with your knife from your serger your knife is going to be destroyed. But this kind of small seams, I don't even need to pin them, but for the sake of this tutorial I'll put a pin on it. Now, if you are using a very soft jersey or something like that, although this is made for more stable knits, I truly advise to put, deeply advise to put some clear elastic in your shoulder seam, and I'll put a link here to the tutorial where I'm using that. I'm not going to put in mine because it's not really so stretchy, and I don't expect that it's going to get a lot of stress here in the shoulder seams. So, but if you do that, please put them in the back seam, or you know what, I'm just going to put it so you can see it how it's done. So I have here my serger, I have my clear elastic, and I'm just going to see if I can zoom a little bit to the serger. Let's see. Okay, so I think that's good. So I have here my clear elastic, as you can see. I'm just going to cut it on a, oh, of course you cannot see anything because it's transparent. I just cut it on a corner, and I'm going to lift up my presser foot. I have 4 threads in my serger, and with the tweezers I'm just going to fit it to the hole this presser foot has a hole here in front of the needles. Let's see. Here, my needles are coming here, and there is another hole here. Maybe your serger has that too. And if you have that, you can make really good use of it in this case. Lower the presser foot to put this back. So I have my elastic, which is a little bit cut with a corner that is going to fit really easily through this hole. Push it a little bit, presser foot down, find my pedal, and now it's already under the presser foot. The next step is of course to take my pieces. I have here the yoke, and I am going to sew from the back yoke, because I want to have that elastic in the back seam. So when I press my seam to the back, it's going to be catched in the under the seam allowance. So I have my pieces here married at the seam and not at the corners. You see they are a little bit, they are not aligning perfectly, but when everything is going to be stitched, it's going to be perfectly aligned. So they are aligned at a 6mm seam allowance, what I have. So again, I'm going to sew from the back. Keep the elastic in the front, put the presser foot up, slide it under, and just sew. I'm not pulling on the elastic, I'm doing nothing, I just let it fit. Differential fit is on neutral, and my stitch length is about 3, and the width is the smallest one, and my machine is 5.5. And that's about the 6mm seam allowance on my pattern. And I'm not cutting anything, I'm just coming directly with the next one. Again, you see I have a little bit of discrepancy here. I need to have that, because only like this I know that my pieces are married at the 6mm seam allowance. Like this. Let's see, a little bit more to the front. And now I can sew this one too. You could use a pin. Okay, this to the front. And now I can cut my elastic. And like this, I have now the clear elastic in my shoulder seam, and this is from the front. And when I'm pressing this now to the back, like this, the elastic is going to be catched there, and you can really press it. They say that it's up to 200 degrees heat, but I'm not really using my iron so hot, so it's not going to melt, it's not going to happen anything. So the yoke is done. I'm going to press this off camera, and then we can go on with the next step. And the next step, put the serger for a moment away, because I said that I'm going to use only the serger, but there are a few steps where I'll have to use my sewing machine. So I'm going to put the yokes to the side for a bit. Let's see, this is going a little bit away. And the next step is to make, I have here the book, the magazine actually, and the next step on the short list here is to make the pleats in the sleeves, and I need to have both sleeves of course. Let's put this to the side, and here is the huge sleeve with the extra pleats. Let's see if I can. This is so big, it's not even coming in the cam. Put the serger away for a second. So now I need to make the pleats, and to make the pleats I need to see where my pattern piece is. And if I'm watching like this to my sleeve, I see that all the pleats are going to the front. You have also on the pattern sheet a back and a front, and I see that all the arrows are pointing to the front. So now I'm ready to pleat my sleeve. Something very important, you have a back and a front of this pattern piece. So to be sure that I'm not going to mess them up, I've made here a double notch on the side seam of the back, because then I know that this is the back. And as we said, all the pleats are going to the front, so I will have to go with the pleats this way, pleating them to the front. I'm just going to put a pin or two. And very important again is to keep in mind where that shoulder notch is. So we are pleating from the right side of the fabric, bringing the two marks, in this case from, let's see, from the back to the front, because we need to have the pleat going to the front. And of course, the best thing is to baste this with your sewing machine. And I'm almost to the shoulder. And I think that if you want to pleat this differently, to pin, let's say, the back pleats to the front, to the back, and the front to the front, you have to pleat your pattern piece in paper, and then be sure that the edge that you are getting here is still smooth. Otherwise you need to add a little bit of paper and cut them. As you see that it's going to change a little bit this edge if you are going to pleat them the other way or differently than what was intended in the pattern. So I'm just going to continue with this. Going to do the other sleeve too, and then we can go on with the construction. And in the instructions we need to put the let's see, the sleeve in the front and the back, and later we need to add the yokes. So I'm just going to continue here and meet you back. So I'm here at my sewing machine, and I have some black thread in the bobbin, which is a good thing to take it up. I'm just going to baste it. I have a big stitch, I have a 4-stitch set, and I did my presser foot pressure a little bit higher. I'm just going to put my differential feet also on. So I just want to stitch in the seam allowance. I have only a 6mm seam allowance, so I need to be careful that I'm not going into the garment, because I don't want to spend time to take this out. So I'm just going to stitch, and I'm going to take my sewing machine, my pin needles out, my pins. Being careful that the pleats are staying on the right take the pin out, and this is going to make, of course, everything much easier when just a little bit. My presser foot is going by itself up with the needle down, because the machine is like this. But if your machine is not doing that, you can stop, lift your presser foot a little bit, and go on with stitching. Pin out. So I'm going to continue like this. I'm going also to do the other sleeve, of course, and then I can meet you back to put these sleeves into the bodice of the garment. This, take them out, and I have here two more. Oops. I know that there are a lot of people that they just sew over pins. I'm not doing that unless it's by accident or something like that, but it's not something that I like to do, because sometimes the needle does get in touch with the pin, and if it's not even if it's not getting broken, can get a little bit damaged and then creating even more problems. So I think the best and the safest thing to do is just to take your pins out while you're coming up to them. You'll have to take them eventually out, so you might as well just do it before you are coming with your needle to them. And I am done. I have my sleeves here. Let's see, this is the front of the sleeve, so this will be my right sleeve, and I have also the left sleeve. The next step is to put these sleeves in the front and the back. And I have here, let's see, because now I don't know anymore, I just need to take my pattern piece. Usually I do make for the back a little snip to know that that's the back, but this is definitely the back, because if I am to check it against here, this is not going to fit. Okay, so this is the back. I might as well start with the back. And what they say is to put the sleeves in the back and in the front first. And very useful, my little notches here. I should have made 2 notches here too. And I'm just going to stitch this with my serger in this case. And again, I'm offsetting this by a little bit to start sewing at the 6mm seam allowance, like so. You see, and when this is getting open, this is going to be a nice straight line here at the seam. So I'm going to stitch this together, and here I'll have an even more offset because of that corner, something like this. And I'm going to stitch my seam. Put one more pin here. So this is one, and I'm going to put the other sleeve too on this back. Let's see, where is my seam so you can see it. So here, let's see, this is the front, that's the other back. Where is my back? Here. I have the notches here somewhere. I had to cut my sleeves in 2 pieces, or in 2 pieces, a single layer I should say, just because I did not check the cutting diagram what Burda is giving. So, and I wanted actually to look a little bit for how to cut the back and the front. So I had to cut the sleeve single layer because they are so big they did not fit on a folded fabric. And it's something really very, very important to keep in mind is to if you cut single layer the sleeves, you cut with your with the right side of the fabric up, let's say. You cut one time with the pattern piece facing right side up, and the other time you keep the fabric right side up, but you are flipping your pattern with the right side down on the pattern, so you have a mirrored image. So I have, this is the back. I'm just going to stitch this with my serger again. So I'm just going to come again here with a 6mm seam allowance. I'm sitting a little bit funky here because the serger is really far away on my table. Let's see. Put this here back nicely. Still on the right seam allowance. Lift a little bit. And just going to stitch this. And I'm going to repeat this for the other sleeve and back seam, and then I'm going to do the same on the front. See, in my case I don't have a lot of waving, but if you are sewing with something that is softer, I lost my scissors. If you are sewing with something that is a softer material and you see that your seam is getting all wavy, you can put the differential feed a little bit higher on your serger, or if you are on your sewing machine, you can put the presser foot pressure a little bit lower. So I have here again the other back. Put this pin out and say, let's see. If I put my differential feet one step higher, I will not have any waving, but you know, this fabric is pretty stable and it's not waving as much as a soft jersey will do. And I just dialed my stitch a little bit shorter. So these are the backs, and I'm just going to show you this, and then I'm going to do the same for the fronts. Open the thing well. So this is one seam that, where is the, here it is. This is one seam. Oops. Oh, that's better. This is one seam on the back, and here is the other one. So now I'm just going to keep this like this. I'll press it in a minute. And I have here the front piece, and I'm going to put this face down. And I'm just going to flip it like this. Let's see, I have here my sleeve, and I want to marry the front, the other part of the sleeve, with the front bodice, right sides together. Again, put a pin for a moment like this, and then the front. And I'm just going to repeat. I'm going to stitch this also with the serger, exactly the same way as with the back. So like this, and then we will have attached the sleeves already to the bodice. We have only the yoke, and close the side seams and put the bands on. So I'm going to stitch the fronts and meet you in a moment. This is done. And now I can press this and make them ready for the yokes. Just going to put this out for a moment because we don't need it right now. I have here my little pressing table, and this is what we have now. A little bit of a mess, but these are the seams, and let's see. Of course, we need to check this again. Let me see. I think this one is the front. No, this is the back, because all the pleats are going that way. So this is the back, and I'm just going to press these seams. Let's see. Going to use my seam roll. So I'm going to press the let's see, I think I'm going to press everything to the sleeve. And because I'm not sure how this fabric is going to react on heat, I'm just going to use my pressing cloth here, which is a piece of organza, and this is how I'm going to press all the seams. and I'm going to meet you in a second on how to insert those yokes. So at the moment we have the front with the sleeve sewn and the yoke. The yoke pieces are here, and we know that the deeper one is going to be in the front, and we have then the other one on the back. Of course we are going to sew right sides together, so I'm going to open this and start pinning a little bit the center points of my yoke. But before that, I really want to add a little bit of interfacing at the center front and the center back. And I have here some. I'm just going to use my hem for a moment. Let's see. I have a little bit of interfacing here, and it's really just a little bit needed. Actually, even this is too big. And the half of this one. So I'm just going to grab my piece, and this is one. Be sure that you have the glue side on the garment. I think you cannot see it even anymore. Press a little bit, and then I have the other one. I'm going to see if I have the glue down. Even this one is too big, but most of the time I can peel it off, but it's too much. Alright, so that's set now. So I have here the small piece of interfacing glued on my garment, and I'm going to measure the 6mm seam allowance here to determine that point. These pens are these are new ones that I have, but they are kind of thick. I think I like the ones that I had before even better. So this is 6mm, and I'm going to go to my sewing machine. I'm going to baste a little bit. I'm going to make this point to be sure that it's going to be perfectly, and this I can even see that it's not. I'm going to work this out also on my sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to baste, let's say 2 centimeters from here to the center and then back to the other side, and I'm going to repeat for the back too. I'll put here an F for the front. I'm using this is heat erasable, so I'm not worried about leaving marks on my fabric. So I have here my stitched V. As you can see, I'm just going to cut this down, and then I have the same for the other bodice piece here, and also here I'm going to give it a little press and cut again. So now this is going to be really easy to sew my yoke into it. Just going to come here, take a pin, put it in the middle of this, and I know that this is going to fit here. So I'm just going to walk my seam from this point up, and first I'm going to this is the shoulder seam of the yoke. I'm going to put it on that shoulder seam mark on my sleeve, which was very important, you remember, because we have all those pleats. And just going to work from the yoke part. I don't really have a particular method of pinning, and I have here another notch on the yoke which is meeting on the seam of the sleeve with the bodice. So I'm going to use that. And I'm going to use these ones. And you know, if your pleats did get a little bit of just a millimeter or something, you'll feel that in this seam, but because everything is very stretchy, you'll be able to work that out. Okay, so let's see. We should have here another notch. And we do have another notch. I'm going to pin this around and I'm going to stitch, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to stitch only at the V's with the sewing machine, and the rest I'm going to put it with my serger, just because it's easy, it's fast, and it's going to, again, I'm meeting my point of my yoke with the point of my bodice. I'm going to stitch this, stitch pin this, like so, very nicely. And then and then again, let's see, this is my front, so again the shoulder seam here needs to come to the back. I think I did not press those. Let's see, we have it here together with the notch of the sleeve. I have here the notch of the sleeve with the bodice, and again okay, and I'm here all the way to the last back seam, or the back of the last sleeve with the yoke. Put the pin, and let's see, do I have another one? Yes. So match the shoulder point of the yoke with the shoulder notch on the sleeve. Match the shoulder, the notch on the yokes with the seam of the sleeve and bodice sewing step. I see here that I catched my fabric a little bit. I'm going to, can you see here? I'm going to snip that stitch. It's not really important. It's not going to unravel everything. Okay, and then I can stitch this all the way. Let's marry this last bit also. Okay, let's see, this is still in the center. So I'm just going to stitch a little bit at the center front here, and I'm going to move this pin because I want to stitch from the side of the bodice in order to be sure that I'm going to catch this little point here, and then I'm going to come with the serger all the way around. So I have my machine set on a 2, so just a little bit smaller stitch than usual. And what I want to do on my sewing machine, and if you are using only your sewing machine, you can use your normal stitch length or whatever you use to stitch this, straight stitch, or I never use straight stitches on my sewing machine, but if you are comfortable with that, please do that. I'm just going to stitch here with a straight stitch, because my what is important for me now is to attach this little bit exactly on that point of the yoke, so that all this is going to match. I have here a small pleat, but that's not important because I'm not going to stitch that down. So I'm just going to back up a little bit. Let's see, I hope you can see a little bit what I'm doing. So I know that my seam allowance is 6 millimeters. So I'll have to stitch with the correct seam allowance here. Let's see, this is, and that's the benefit of having the knee level. So I'm going to be careful that this, I think you cannot see anything, but this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep this in place. Oops. And I'm going to stitch now with the, I'm not going to back stitch necessarily because I'm going to come here with the serger. I'm going to take all this fabric away. I want to catch that, and now I'm going to turn the corner a little bit, like so. Let's see. So this is what is stitched. Let's find it on the right side. And this is what I have here. And when this is going to be pressed, it's going to look really, really nice. So now I'm going to do the other corner too, and I'm going to come around with the serger. So I have the V's already sewn with the sewing machine. And now I can go around and I can start, I think I'm going to start, where should I start? The back. I'm going to start from the back. And I'm going to sew these ones also from the side of the bodice. So I can see exactly where I'm going with my needles here. Let's see. Just going to go like this. And I'm going to stitch all the way around. The yoke, the shoulders. I'm coming now at the shoulders here. And I want to keep the pleats a little bit in place. Be careful to take the pins out of the way. And that's the nicest thing, having the, when you sew with your serger, having the 6 millimeter seam allowance, as you can align that with your blade, and you know, it's going to give you a very accurate seam allowance. Let's see, going around. Always take care that you are not sewing stuff that you don't want to sew with your serger, especially if you are going to cut things, because then you cannot fix it. I have here that shoulder seam with my notch. Go a little bit slowly, as there are quite a bit of layers there. Let's see. So I'm going to continue all the way around the yoke, and I am going to show you what I get at the end. And then the next step is going to be, I have here fold, is going to be sewing the side seam and the side seams together with the sleeve. And now I'm coming almost to the next corner in the front. And I want to go a little bit slowly here. See. I'm going to come from the other side. Because I don't want to turn a corner because it's going to affect how the corner is going to sit. Oops. Going to be careful to start like this. Yes. The seam of the sleeve is towards the sleeve like I wanted. And I'm going to sew off on this corner. Oops. Here is my corner, as you can see. It's pretty good, I think. Put the machine away. Take this away. And let's see what we got. I think that was the most difficult part. We are almost done with everything. Okay. So this is the back. Oops. Looks pretty nice. And here is the front, which it will have to be a little bit pressed, and the seam allowance is going to be pressed down like so. And I see here a little bit of basting stitches. I'll have to take them out from the sleeve, but this is now it's almost done. I need to sew now the side seams. Let's see if I can zoom a little bit out. So I'm going to put this one back wrong side out. So I'm going to match the sleeve seam here, the under seam, again with the seam allowances facing the sleeve. And if there is quite a bit of bulk, you can definitely offset them, one to the front, one to the back. It's really not a problem. And then I have the bottom of my sleeve. Put a pin on it. I'm going to put it like this. And this is my sleeve seam. You really don't need to pin everything as if you did cut well. And through your pattern, to be sure that everything is going to match, you can put only a few pins at the beginning and the end. Here I have another pin, and I'm going to sew with my serger from the bottom of the shirt all the way up to the sleeve end. So this piece is going to be serged, and I'm going to do the same for the other edge, for the other underseam with this under or the side seam with the sleeve seam. And then I'm going to be ready for the bands, and that's going to conclude this tutorial. Again, I'm also going to offset here the sleeve. One is to the bodice and one is to the sleeve, and it's really something that is not going to be noticed in the on the outside, but it's something that is going to help you stitch really easily over all those layers of fabric. So this is my side seam all the way to the sleeve. I'm going to run this through the serger, then I'm going to press everything and change the colors of my threads in my serger. Oops. And be ready to put all those ribbing and pieces, and in your case make the bands, sew the ends, the short ends together, and you'll be on the same step with me to put the ribbing. going to get pressed now, and I'm going to be ready to put the bindings. First I'm going to put the neck, try it on to see how long I want to have the sleeves, and then based on that I'm going to decide the length and to add the ribbing. So I trimmed my band to 1.5 or to 1.5 to 2.5 or thereabout. I think it's just a little bit bigger than, yes, 2.5, 1 inch. And your band is going to be the size that is in the magazine. You are going to stitch the short ends with the seam allowance that you chose to use, and now you have a circle that you need to put in your neckline. So I have here my points, and I'm going to start attaching this on the back. Let's see. I have here 1 point. This is quite thick, this ribbing. I'm not sure I like it, but but before that, of course, you need to quarter this stuff also. So I have here the center back with the center front, let's say, so the half of it. And then I'm going to put these two together, the back with the center front, and I'm going to put a pin here also, because these points are the points that I'm going to use, of course, to match the points we just made in the neckline. This is really stretchy. Again, I'm not a big fan of it. And now I can put them on my neckline. I have here the notch of the back that is going to get together with the seam of this little band. And then I have the center front with the center front, let's say, of the band. Put a pin on it. The same is going to be on the sides. And if I don't really like this, I can take it out later and I just use a band. But I wanted a little bit of contrast here on this fabric, which is really lovely, but that needs a little bit of breakup of the pattern. So this is what I have now. As you can see, my neckline is quite smaller than the band, but this is going to stretch really nicely and is going to accommodate very easily the extra length of the neckline. So I'm going to attach this with the serger, of course, and I just want to change the needles, the threads in my serger. I'm going to meet you in a second here back. So I have my machine set up with some darker thread, and I'm going to start at the back neck, and later I can do that treatment, you know, of covering the neck seam if I want. But let's see how this is going to go, and I think this is going to be really nice. Let's see. Just going to start at the back, being careful that I don't catch things that I don't want to catch. To lift it up a little bit because there's a lot of bulk here. Let's see. I want to use my pins because I don't have notches in the band. I have only notches in the garment. And I'm going to stitch with the band up the garment against the bed of the machine. I'm going to put my differential feet back on neutral, and I'm going to stretch the band to match the garment. So not the garment needs to ease in the band. And I'm going to stretch only the band. And I have the feeling that the band is a little bit too short. I hope I'll not get a lot of gathers. but we will see. And again, I'm using 6mm seam allowance. I'm not cutting almost anything from the garment, so if I don't like it, I can take it out and just put a band from the same fabric as the rest of the garment. It's really okay. Okay. Stretch the band to meet the garment. Align the edges nicely, and we'll see what we get. But I have confidence that we get something really nice. This French terry from Minerva is really, really nice. It's soft, and I'm wearing now a pair of joggers, pants made with the same French terry, and they are really my dream home pants. Oops. And I'm almost to the last pin. And then the next step is going to be to steam this really nicely. My iron is still warm. And now back to the center back. Let's see. The seam allowance of the yoke must be okay. And then going here to the back. And now I'm going to disengage my knife as I'm back on the beginning of the seam, and I'm going to stitch a little bit, leave the presser foot, turn the work. And this machine is stitching only with the presser foot down, so I need to put it back down. And now we can see the end result of this. This is not looking like much right now, right? Let's see, this is the back, this is the front. This is how it's looking now, not pressed or anything. So the next step, of course, is going to be to press this really nicely, to give it a lot of steam first before pressing anything actually. And to do that, I'm just going to bring back my pressing table. I'm going to use my pressing hem here to lift it a little bit up. This looks really nice. Let's see. And I'm going to turn it a little bit so to be able to help this back to be nicely pressed. Again, I'm giving it more steam than pressing anything actually. I'm not even putting my iron on it. Okay, so this is done. This I can trim, is really not going to get undone. I never had that problem, so this I could finish with a little bit of the same fabric, just fold it and stitch it here. I'm going to put a link to a tutorial that I have here on YouTube. But this is done. I'm going to put this on to see how long I want to have the sleeves, and if I need to adjust something on the length of the bodice of the sweater. So as you can see, I'm completely in my sewing mood. Not so much makeup, and my hair is is not so good. But I just wanted to show you, I have the sweater on. I really like, this is what I wanted on the neckline. The original, it would have been a little bit till here and more close to the neck. So it's really, the original would have been really like is in the magazine, much higher, but I really like it like this. This is what I wanted. And for the sleeve, as you can see, these are my sleeves at the moment. I have here the little cuff, and these are really too long. So what I'm going to do, I'm putting the cuff over the sleeve, and this is how I want to have them. They're going to hang a little bit, let's see. So as you can see, it's almost a width of the cuff that I need to take away. I have here, I placed a pin, and I'm going to cut them there. This one, of course, also. And for the length, I have my band, which is I think around 5 centimeters, and I said I did add, you've seen at the beginning of the tutorial, I added something at the top, the hem here. Otherwise, oh, this is so annoying, this is so long. Otherwise it would have been, let's see, it's a little bit shaped, so with hem and everything it would have been quite cropped. So I'm going to leave this length. With the attached ribbing is going to be a little bit like blousing effect, you know. So this is going to stay like this. I'm going to put only the band on it. In the original you have only a hem that you have to add yourself in the beginning, so mine is going to be a bit longer than the what is supposed to be. So this is really nice. Oh, I really love these pleats. I think I have some basting that I need to take out. This is looking great. Okay, so I'm going to put the sleeves, and the sleeves I'm going to put them really in the same way as I did the neckband. Quarter the sleeve, quarter the cuff, and I'm going to stitch them. And in the same way I'm going to do also the band. If you are making a hem, you'll just turn up the hem once, and also stitched with a cover stitch machine, or just with a zigzag on your machine, sewing machine, with a double needle, or with a blind hem with your serger, or whatever finish you want to have. But that is going to conclude your sweater. So I'm going to put the cuffs in the same way as the neckband, the hem, the band here, the bottom band, the same way as the neckband, and my sweater is going to be done. And I'm going to come back with some conclusions. So this is it. It's completely finished with the ribbing band and the bands on my sleeves. I think this length is really cute. It's really nice. I really like this open neck here. I hate when the neckband is finishing here at my neck bone. I really don't like that. So again, this is a preference of mine. You can totally do follow the pattern, and if you are putting it on before you put the band and you think, well, it's going to come really high, you can adjust that. And most of the time you'll use something that is very stretchy, so you'll not necessarily have to use to cut another band, but even so it's using just a little bit of fabric. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Give me thumbs up if you enjoy it, and I would really love to hear from you if you are going to try the pattern and use my tutorial. So I think this is a really nice pattern. It's definitely beginners friendly, with a little bit of exception here in the front, where you really need to take a little bit of care with interfacing the point, and then sewing first with your sewing machine. If you are using a serger, do so with your sewing machine to have a perfect V here in the front, and of course in the back. So this was it. This was the Burda 11 2022 sweater 104, with a little bit of adjustments, and starting from tracing the pattern, a little bit of adjustments, and sewing the pattern. I hope you enjoyed my video. Thank you for watching. Bye!